Hello and welcome. That was a terrible introduction. Just hello. What kind of? Maybe that's why I'm not in real show business. Why I'm in the YouTube business instead of real show business. But welcome to the final episode of this series that doesn't have a name. It's me talking about music, and as you see by the title, when you click on this, I'm going to talk about AC/DC, and I have some props today. I'm gonna start with opening this AC/DC. This is German beer, Australia hard rock. The track listing there of Rock or Bust, which I will be talking about shortly. This is my preparation. This is how I prepare when I do these videos. I drink a beer of the band names. I've had Saigon Kick beer, Goldfinger beer, Cherry Poppin' Daddy's beer, Faith No More beer, and today, hello, AC/DC beer. My cat is here, wondering who I'm talking to and why I have my back turned to her. But I'll give a little insight into this. We're doing something now that we call the production meeting. We do this, me and my team here. They're all behind the cameras, that's why you can't see them. We have these production meetings where we talk about the video. We talk about what the points that we want to hit. And excuse me, it might be a little bit loud here. I'm outdoors. And that's about it. So, and I should also say, as I wrap up this series with no name, with AC/DC today, that I should thank all my my crew, my producer. I can't remember his name, and the other guy behind the camera, the camera operator. I just call him Hey Guy. And you can't see it, but above my head there's a boom mic. So for the boom operator, we generally don't make eye contact with each other. Thank you to all of those people. And so this is the behind the scenes footage. This is going to go on the Blu-ray, the bonus edition, bonus features, maybe an Easter egg on the Blu-ray, maybe even Ultra HD, a 4K edition, I think is in the works. It's being talked about. What do you think, Guy? No, forget it. Well, anyway, so that's what I'm doing. I have my other props here. I have, as you can see, I have the AC/DC albums that I'm going to talk about, as well as others. If you can see these, you might see that they're not all there, but I will talk about all of them. And I want to share some news. There's been a little bit of trouble in the Danbowski camp lately. I'm having some trouble with YouTube. The numbers aren't where I want them to be. I think I feel like I feel like I won with Cherry Poppin' Daddies. Cherry Poppin' Daddies was a good video. It had hundreds of views, multiple hundreds of views. Out of the 21 or 20 or 22 episodes I've done. Some of the other ones, I didn't like the numbers. Some of them only had, there were some that were less than 100 views. So what I've done is I've filed a request with YouTube for an official recount. That's right, I'm doing a recount of these views. I have no reason to believe that they're wrong. There's no basis to believe they're wrong. I just personally don't like it. And I'm a small, petty man. And I guess when I don't like something, when I'm not happy about something, I like to make sure everybody knows it. And I like to be a pain in the ass. And I guess in my heart, I know the views are correct. I know a recount won't do anything. I know it's not going to go my way. But I feel like I like to just inconvenience people. So so that's it. So we're going to have our production meeting now. I've got my phone here with me. Sometimes I use this for notes when I'm missing some of the CDs from the bands that I talk about. I have to refer to the notes. And so production meeting in store is in session now. We can't leave the cameras running during the actual production meeting. This is the pre-production. So that's it. So for anybody who watched all of the other 20 or 21 episodes, thank you. I don't know who I'm talking to. People on YouTube always say, hey guys, and you know, all of you, or they say folks. A lot of people like to say folks. I don't like referring to people as folks, but I hear a lot of people doing that. So thank you for watching, and for subscribing. I'm up close to 10,000 subscribers on this little YouTube channel that I started in 2006. I started this channel 14 years ago, and it's been pretty successful, considering that I don't, other than what I've just said, I don't really promote it, and it's not very good. I don't edit anything. Everything is just one take. There's no, I don't add any music or sound effects or nice titles or flashy things like that, like a lot of people do. But thanks for anybody who watched it. I know that's not most of you. That's why I have to have this, this recount. And I know also a lot of you cheat, because YouTube shows me. It shows how long my videos are. It might be, let's say, 1 hour and 5 minutes. And it shows the average view duration is 6 minutes, or it's 3 minutes and 49 seconds. So thank you for scrolling through. I know a lot of you just scroll through. I'm not sure exactly what you're looking for, but thank you for watching. Thank you for scrolling. And I think that's about it. I think my team and I, are we ready? No, still not yet? You're always so slow. All right. Well, and what about him? When? I didn't even notice he was gone. Well, we're already having problems. This is kind of why this, to be honest, why this series is falling apart. I am in talks with Netflix, though, to do a proper thing. To, you know, YouTube is, you know, I think I might be getting a little bit too big for YouTube. I have to move on for Netflix if they can, if we can agree on a schedule. So that's it. So I'm about to, I'm gonna finish this this rock or bust beer. I don't know if it's rude or polite, or if it's acceptable to drink on camera, but I'm gonna finish up. I'm gonna talk about the name with the band with the most electrifying name in rock music, AC/DC. And stay tuned, because here it comes. All right, after a successful production meeting, I'm here solo by myself. My crew is all, again, well, they're always behind the cameras. That's why you never see them. You only see this, you only see me. So I don't need to say anything else about this video. I'm going to talk today about AC/DC in this final episode of the show that has no name. The podcast. Some people say it has, that it's a podcast. Kevin Montavon, Ticket Stubs podcast on YouTube. Check it out. He calls this a podcast. So I'm going to talk about AC/DC. I have a very, very long history with AC/DC, as I've mentioned in some of my other videos, which you've not seen and not watched, because you probably skip over the part where I talk about it. AC/DC was possibly either the second or third band that I ever get into after Kiss. It's undeniable that Kiss was number one. I got into Kiss in 1975. And either Black Sabbath or AC/DC was the next band that I got into. I mean, I liked other bands, but I mean that I bought their albums. Was either Black Sabbath or AC/DC. I'm not sure which is which. Forget about Black Sabbath. I already talked about them. Today it's going to be all about AC/DC. I have a very mixed relationship with AC/DC, as you'll see as I go on. I mean, I was born in 1969. Their first album came out in 1975, I guess. So a lot of these, most of these albums, all of these albums, I think, except the newest one, is our Go Back albums. They were already out by the time I bought them. Should I say this now, or should I save it for later? I'll save it for later, about my little bit of a love-hate history with AC/DC. I'll explain that as I go. So to start, AC/DC has a very complex discography. They had some, in the early days, their first couple of albums were released only in Australia, and then later, my point is, I'm not sure where to start. So I'm going to start with what I think is, well, their first album was called High Voltage. But there were two High Voltages. There was the first one, and then there was 2 albums later, which was, the first one was the Australian version. It was only released in Australia in 1975. And then they had a second album, and then High Voltage again was the third album, which was released internationally, which was a little bit different. As I said, it's complex, and I'm not a super hardcore AC/DC fan that knows all the little differences, but some of the songs were a little bit different. They were a little bit longer or shorter. They faded out, or they ended cold. So I'm not sure. But I'm going to start with, I'm going to go back a little bit, and I'm going to start with something a little bit different with this. Now, right off the bat, I'm maybe confusing people, and I'm maybe confusing myself. A couple of things with this. 74 Jailbreak. It didn't come out in 74. It wasn't recorded in 74, I don't think. It came out in 84, I think. Now, right away, I'm going to put that down. I have to go to my notes here. As I mentioned in my preamble video, that's a word that Tony Soprano likes to use. If you like Tony Soprano, you know that word, preamble. So the first album was High Voltage in 1975. Now, this is where it already gets confusing. So in 1975, they had High Voltage, and well, I'll go through the tracks. Here was Baby Please Don't Go, which is on this album, Jailbreak. This was an EP, a 5-song EP that was released in 1984. That was mostly, I think, all from, these are all 5 songs from the original Australian version, 1975, of High Voltage. No, except one. Jailbreak is not. Jailbreak was on the original version of Dirty Deeds Thunder Chief. Or Dirty Deeds Thunder Chief, which I'll explain. If I remember, I'll explain that when I get to it. So the High Voltage album, this is a disaster already. What word do you like? Do you like dumpster fire? Do you like train wreck? Do you like shit show? This is all of these. These are words that people seem to like and use. Okay, so let me put that album down. So the first album, High Voltage, which I don't have. I think it's very difficult to find anywhere. I sure don't have it. So Baby Please Don't Go, which is on Jailbreak. She's Got Balls, which is not. Little Lover, Stick Around. Soul Stripper, which is on Jailbreak. You Ain't Got a Hold on Me, which is on Jailbreak. Love Song, which is not. And Show Business, which is on. Okay, so there are 4 songs that are on Jailbreak that were taken from the original Australian version of High Voltage in 1975, plus Jailbreak, which was on the Australian version of Dirty Deeds Thunder Chief. They released that in 1984. AC/DC was really, really huge by then, and I think they were trying to get some people, they were trying to go dig into their catalog and, get people familiar with these songs. But so the first album, High Voltage, a couple of things about it. I'm not too into this one. Love Song is kind of unique. That's the only AC/DC really. I wouldn't say it's a full-out ballad. It's not Every Rose Has Its Thorn or Heaven by Warrant or I Remember You by Skid Row. It's nothing like that. But that's as close as AC/DC has ever come to a ballad, was Love Song. I'm actually gonna not do that one. I'm just gonna focus on Jailbreak. So the songs on here, Jailbreak, man, I had a really strange relationship with that song. When it came out in when I first heard it in 1984, I kind of loved, hated. I got sick of it because the video's on Much Music all the time, and all the metal shows, the Midweek Metal Mania, Power Hour, the videos on that. And I'm going to talk about my semi-hatred towards AC/DC later. But when I went years and years and years without hearing Jailbreak, and I love it now. That I would say it's even a favorite AC/DC album. And in case you don't know, I'm going to talk about my favorite AC/DC albums, not only on each album, but what I would consider the best ones ever in their catalog. Other than that, You Ain't Got a Hold on Me, Show Business, and Soul Stripper. I don't have too much to say about any of those. They were never favorites. I am not really even familiar with them. I do really like Baby Please Don't Go. Even that's a cover song. I'm not sure who did it originally, but it sounds like it. To me, that sounds more like an AC/DC song than some of the other ones. So Baby Please Don't Go, a very up-tempo, good AC/DC cover song. So not too much to say about Jailbreak. 74 Jailbreak, not sure why they called it that. And I should say AC/DC. I mentioned in my pre-production, the preamble, that the most electrifying name in rock. And I mentioned also in the last video that I did, which was Soundgarden, how much I love the name Soundgarden for a band. Maybe one of the best, and I mentioned there was another band that had a better name. Right here, AC/DC, maybe the best name ever for a band. It's what a great name, and a classic logo too. Could be the best name ever for a band, and it really, the name AC/DC really defines what they sound like. They're very electric, explosive, fantastic name, AC/DC. So Jailbreak. Now I'm going to go to 74 Jailbreak, just to be clear. So, no, now then they came out, this is so confusing. Dumpster, shit show, garbage fire, what do you call it? Dumpster fire, train wreck, whatever, continues. Then also they put out TNT, an album which was also Australia only, called TNT. And I have to go to the notes here, which was basically, or became the high voltage, which I'm going to talk about next. They're international. So the TNT album, which was released, I think also only in Australia, had almost the exact same track listing as what was released later. If you know what I'm talking about, you should understand this. If you don't, it must be very, very confusing. So TNT had almost the same track listing as what they would later re-release as High Voltage. So the international version of High Voltage, which was their third release, was basically the track listing of their second album, which was called TNT. So TNT, let me compare the track listing with TNT with this one this one High Voltage right here. Maybe there's one or two small differences. So this came out in 76, I think, and not only that, the track listing was a little bit, some of the songs were a little bit different. It's a long way to the top if you want to rock and roll. That could be one of my favorite AC/DC songs ever. I love that song. I'm going to talk about also, as I go on, about Bon Scott versus Brian Johnson, as everybody likes to do, Sammy Hagar versus David Lee Roth, John Bush and Joey Belladonna, and whoever else. Rock and roll singer, the Jack Livewire. So far it's the same. TNT, okay, that's the same. Rocker, okay, now Rocker was on TNT, but it wasn't on this High Voltage, although later it was on 30 Deeds Thunder Chief. Can I Sit Next to You, Girl? Little Lover. Little Lover was on High Voltage, but it wasn't on TNT. I think Little Lover was on the original High Voltage, and then High Voltage. And School Days, a Chuck Berry song. So that's TNT, let's say, but also I'm going to focus particularly on this High Voltage rock and roll. And about my AC/DC shirts, I have an AC/DC High Voltage shirt. I never had any AC/DC shirts, despite the fact that I've been listening to AC/DC since, I won't tell you when, but for a long, long time, decades. I'll talk about that when I get to it, when I got into AC/DC. I was downtown here in Cuernavaca, I think it was about 2 years ago, with my friend Gary, and I found a couple of AC/DC, official real AC/DC shirts. I bought a High Voltage one and a Highway to Hell one for, they were about $2 or $3 American each. I don't know why I'm quoting in American dollars, since I'm not from the United States and I don't live there. And I don't know if anybody from that country is watching this. But so that's my AC/DC shirt history. And I said to my friend Gary, in all the years, decades I've listened to AC/DC, I'd never had an AC/DC shirt. And I'll talk later about my concert history with AC/DC. So getting back to this, as I said, it's a long way to the top if you want to rock and roll. That's a great song. That's, I would say, one of my top AC/DC songs. And it's kind of funny, that one and what else? High Voltage and another Rock and Roll Singer. Yeah, it's a long way to the top. Rock and Roll Singer and High Voltage are basically the same song. They all have that very, very, and that of It's a Long Way to the Top is if you want to rock and roll. I can maybe also now talk about people that talk about AC/DC. They put a new album out last week called Power Up, which I'm going to talk about probably in a long, long time. Now, when they announced this album, I guess it was about 2 months ago, maybe. And I have a tendency to subject myself to pain and suffering by making the mistake of reading comments on websites, on websites or on Facebook or something like that. Even Instagram, maybe Twitter. I don't use Twitter. There are a lot of people who think they're very smart or clever or insightful or funny, that when AC/DC is recording a new album or releasing an album, they think it's one of those things to point out that that it's the same. They've been recording the same album for 45 years, and every song sounds the same. And I kind of, I understand that. AC/DC does have a very, very general sound. I think they're very happy with that sound. Otherwise, they would change. You're not going to find any ska influences in AC/DC. You're not going to hear horns or piano or bongos or maracas or anything like that. Although bagpipes, and it's a long way to top if you want to rock and roll. But yeah, you're not being clever or witty or insightful or original. You're being very cliche by pointing out that AC/DC have been recording the same album and have been doing the same songs for this year. So just stop. You're really an embarrassment to, I guess you're not an embarrassment to anybody because nobody really cares. But I'll say that. So I'll get that out of the way that yes, AC/DC, they have the same style. All their albums definitely don't sound the same though. Don't confuse style with sound. Was that clear? What else can I say about here? The Jack. I hated the Jack. When that song, when I was a kid or a teenager and they used to play that on the radio, because that was a radio song. When I lived in Toronto, I used to listen to Q107 and they played the Jack on there. I didn't like that slow, bluesy style. I really like it now. I think the Jack is a great song. Live Wire is a late contender for one of my, I wouldn't say it's one of my favorite AC/DC songs, but I really, really like Live Wire. TNT, overplayed, but as I've said before, don't confuse overplayed with a song that sucks, because TNT doesn't suck. It's a great song. I'm just really, really tired of it. Can I Sit Next to You and Little Lover? Those are kind of in the same vein as the Jack. They're those slower, bluesier AC/DC songs that they used to do, I would say, especially in the old days. Maybe not as much in the more recent albums. She's Got Balls and High Voltage. I like this album a lot. I should say I was very late to this album. I didn't get into the Bon Scott era until I would say it was 10 years ago, maybe even 8 or 9 years ago, when I fully got all the AC/DC catalog. And as I said, I think I'll talk about that. But yeah, this is a really, really good album. And I think for most people would consider this the first AC/DC album. And amazing. I love it. This is a really, really good one. I wouldn't say it's my favorite, but I do like it a lot. So, High Voltage, rock and roll. Next, kind of, I'm going to maybe go a little bit out of order again here. In true order, this next one, this is Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap. Dirty Deeds Thunder Chief. This came out in the real catalog, linear catalog. This did come out after High Voltage. This was their, I guess in terms of what they recorded, this was their 4th album. This didn't come out in North America, or I think anywhere outside of Australia, until 1980 or 81. It came out after Back in Black. I never heard this until it was released in North America. And I can tell you, this wasn't the first AC/DC album I heard. I think it was, I'll still keep that for a secret. But when I heard this, I had already heard AC/DC. It was a new album for me, although at that time it had been out for years. I love this one. This could be my favorite AC/DC album. I did have this when I was a kid. I had this, the record, the vinyl of it. People really like vinyl these days. At that time, vinyl was just the way that you listen to music. People didn't specify there was vinyl. But I love this. I love the pink logo. I love the album cover. And most importantly, I like the songs. Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap. Dirty Deeds Thunder Chief. I'm going to finally tell you what that means, as I've mentioned it already about 5 times. When I first heard this song on the radio in 80 or maybe it was 81, before I guess the DJ said the title of the song after it had finished playing, or before, I thought when I heard the song, I thought they were saying Dirty Deeds Thunder Chief. Dirty Deeds, Thunder Chief. That's what I thought. What do you want? I was a dumb kid. Kids are stupid. I was 11. And so I thought I didn't know what Dirty Deeds, Thunder Chief was. I still don't know what it is. But I know it's not Dirty Deeds, Thunder Chief. But man, when I heard that song, that was my second, I'm just giving it away, where I got into AC/DC. Oh my God, I couldn't believe how much I liked that song, Dirty Deeds, Thunder Chief. And so the rest of the album, I would say especially the first half of this album is just amazing. Love at First Feel. Big Balls. Again, you know, as an 11-year-old kid, when you hear a song called Big Balls, you know, you laugh and you snicker and you think, oh my God, this is like incredible. And I hope my mother doesn't hear this, but I've got big balls, he's got big balls, she's got big balls, and they're such big balls and dirty big balls, and we've got the biggest balls of them all. My balls are always bouncing, my balls are always full, and everybody comes and comes again. What else? If your name is on the guest list, no one can take you higher. Everybody says I've got great balls of fire. What else is in that song? My balls are always bouncing from the left and to the right, but when they're held for... No, what else did I missed? I'm getting this all screwed up. But I love that song. Very fun AC/DC song. Very double entendre AC/DC song. Rocker. I'm a rocker. I'm a roller. That's... When I heard Motorhead has a song called Black Leather Jacket, which is essentially, if you've never heard it, I love Motorhead. They're one of my favorite bands ever. I did a video of Motorhead. I've got a big Motorhead tattoo here on my leg, and they have a song called Black Leather Jacket, and it's essentially Motorhead doing their version of Rocker. Rocker is an amazing song. And Problem Child could be in my very, very top AC/DC songs. And then the second half, I don't like it as much, but it's still a great album. Ride On is another one that I didn't really like at the time. One of those slow, mellow, like, as I mentioned, the Jack, and a little bit maybe like Can I Sit Next to You, Girl, Little Lover, something like that. Ride On was never a favorite, although now I do like it a lot. So Dirty Deeds, Thunder Chief was my second AC/DC album, although it was their fourth album, and it didn't come out until much later. A lot of confusion here. Excellent, amazing, and this is a huge album. This really, I remember this was, the title track was on the radio all the time. I love it. Dirty Deeds, Thunder Chief. Thunder Chief. Oh, I should say also Exodus. I love Exodus. I could maybe do one of these videos about Exodus, although I said this is my last episode, and I'm not going to be like these bands that say that they're finished and they come back, so I'm not going to do Exodus. But I love Exodus. And Exodus they had an album in 2003 or 2004 called Temple of the Damned, which is incredible. And they did a cover as, I think it was I don't know if it was the Japanese version or some kind of import version or a iTunes B-side or something. I don't know if iTunes existed back then, but Exodus did a cover of the title track, Dirty Deeds, Thunder Chief, and it's amazing. Really, really good, very heavy. It sounds like Exodus doing AC/DC, which it is. And it really sounds like it. Dirty Deeds, Thunder Chief. I love that album. Better than High Voltage. Not because I don't like High Voltage, just because I love Dirty Deeds, Thunder Chief. Which was, I guess, 76. Now, the next one was Let There Be Rock. I'm not sure if this was 76 or 77. Oh, it looks like 77. I know this is, I think this is a favorite. I think all these 70s AC/DC albums, similar with Kiss, are really considered the classics. My opinion is a little bit maybe not. You know, I wasn't into them then. I had to go back and get into them. I don't think I like this as much as Dirty Deeds, Thunder Chief, but I will say that Let There Be Rock, the title track, that's a contender for top AC/DC song ever. I love Let There Be Rock. And may I submit to you, ladies and gentlemen, is it possible that Let There Be Rock was the first thrash metal song? It's not, I mean, true thrash metal, but it is very, very thrashy. It sounds very aggressive. And you could also maybe make the same argument for Symptom of the Universe by Black Sabbath. Maybe even a little bit, although it was a few years later, Iron Maiden, the song Iron Maiden by the band Iron Maiden, on the album Iron Maiden, just because it was faster. But man, Let There Be Rock is just so out of control, thrashy, crazy. It sounds like they're thrashing their instruments. Yeah, now Problem Child was on here. Was Problem Child on the North American version of... yeah, Problem Child, I don't know if you can see it, was on the North American version of Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap. And it is also on Let There Be Rock. It may have been, they may have been two a little bit different. I know one had the end had, they kind of, at the end of the song, they repeated, I guess, like a coda, or they went into it again. But as I said, I love Problem Child. Overdose, that's a good one. That was another one of the aforementioned Exodus. Exodus also did a cover of Overdose, which was my first exposure to that song. I heard that song. They did that. Exodus covered Overdose on Fabulous Disaster in 1989. And I'd never heard the AC/DC version at that point, but I love the Exodus version. I think that was also a bonus, like a B-side or something, maybe of the Toxic Waltz single. But Overdose is a very good, very heavy. I would say this is kind of a heavy album. AC/DC is not... And I can, maybe I'll take this to talk about genres. People like genres, or some people hate genres. For me, AC/DC, at least for sure back then, is a heavy metal band. Back then, there was no, people weren't as obsessed about genres. There weren't as many genres that existed. And people that liked AC/DC also liked Van Halen and Black Sabbath and Kiss. And that was all considered heavy metal. And I know, if you want to tell me that, well, AC/DC never said they're heavy metal, and Lemmy never said that Motorhead was heavy metal. Unfortunately, the bands don't get to decide what people call their music. And I and all my friends, we called AC/DC heavy metal, and we called Motorhead heavy metal. And we probably called Van Halen heavy metal. If it had loud guitars and, you know, a guy screaming and they had long hair and it was aggressive music, it was heavy metal. But this album is, I would say, heavier than, maybe not as, AC/DC, I mean, now you can say they're a hard rock band, but back then I would say heavy metal. But this was a pretty heavy album as far as AC/DC goes. And Whole Lotta Rosie is the last one. That's a classic. That's an AC/DC staple. So this album, also very good. You can't really, as you'll see as I continue, you can't really go wrong with any of the Bon Scott albums. They're really, really good. So Let There Be Rock, title track, fantastic. One of the best AC/DC songs for sure. 1977. Let there be sound. Let there be light. Let there be drums. Let there be guitar. Oh, let there be rock. I love it. Next was was this also 77 or 78? I'm not sure. 78. This is 78. This was Powerage. And this, something I can say about this, or about AC/DC in general, as it relates to this album. I didn't realize, as I said, I didn't get into AC/DC fully, really, get into AC/DC until later. So I didn't realize until later how many bands that I liked that came out in the 80s and 90s and maybe even later were influenced by AC/DC, especially this old AC/DC. Now, especially the first song on Powerage is called, the second song is Down Payment Blues. And there was a band called Four Horsemen, who I really, really like. Their I think first album, Nobody Said It Was Easy, came out in 1990. And I think the Four Horsemen were just a little bit late on the that kind of 80s hard rock, hair metal, if you prefer to call it that. But although it wasn't hair metal, it was a little bit more in the Guns N' Roses, Faster Pussycat vein. But they had a song called Rockin' Is My Business. Rockin' Is My Business. I didn't realize it at the time because I didn't know the song Down Payment Blues. But Rockin' Is My Business by the Four Horsemen in 1990. Oh man, it sounds exactly like Down Payment Blues by AC/DC in 1978. And it's a great song. Riff Raff, that's also a very, very top, a contender for the very top AC/DC song. Oh man, I love that one. It's good for a laugh. Haha. Sin City is another one. That could be another just explosive. This album is also pretty heavy. Sin City. Da, 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 da. That's not a good representation of how AC/DC sounds, but you know how AC/DC sounds. And Sin City is as good as any of them. What else? I like this album a lot. Kicked in the Teeth. It's that one. Did that sound like? Was that sound like somebody else? That's another. I wouldn't say a top favorite, but can I do it? Do I have it in me? I feel it. Two-faced woman with your two-faced lies. I don't know how Bon Scott can sing like that, because I can't. Can I do better than that? No, I can't. I'm not going to do it again. Two-faced woman with your two-faced lies. I love that song. Also could be similar to Livewire. Motley Crue, I think, ripped off a lot of AC/DC song titles. They had Bad Boy Boogie, Livewire, of course. Kicked in the Teeth, AC/DC. Motley Crue had Kicked in the Teeth by Love. And maybe something else as I come to it. Maybe I'll see. But yeah, this album is really good. I think a lot of, I don't know, to be honest, I don't know which AC/DC album is considered the fan favorite. I know Kiss, everybody loves, probably Destroyer is considered their best, the best 70s Kiss album. And let's say Black Sabbath could be like AC/DC. Everybody loves the first 6. This could be my favorite of the Bon Scott era. I'm not sure. And I have a different opinion on this, or a different viewpoint of it, because I got into these much later. Two-faced woman with your two-faced lies! I had to try to do the better one. Those are probably both really bad. I'll have to watch this and see how bad I sounded, but I felt I really had it in me. And my cat is over here sleeping. She doesn't care. So Powerage, and now this was, you could see a pattern forming, kind of strange about AC/DC, going back to Let There Be Rock. I mentioned with Soundgarden, all their albums look like live albums. Let There Be Rock, didn't that look like a live album? It's them playing on the stage. And, but I think Powerage was the first, no, High Voltage, I guess, was the first one that was just Angus Young on the cover. And then Powerage, just Angus Young. Now, they were all on the back. But I guess they were trying to really say that Angus Young was the star of the show. And also, speaking about these commenters who make these, really insightful comments that say, now that Angus Young is 65 years old and he's still wearing a schoolboy outfit, I don't know why you think that's necessary to say. Yes, he's been doing it. He's not a schoolboy. He's 65 years old. Who cares? Stop making your stupid comments. So Powerage, let me show you one more time. I love it. It's a good one. Maybe my favorite. Next, now after when they did the Powerage tour, they did a live album. This was, I guess, in the 70s when live albums were becoming a thing. I've talked before about live albums. I love Live After Death by Iron Maiden. No, Kiss Alive for sure is my favorite live album. Live After Death is for sure number 2. I love Worldwide Live, Scorpions. This one, because I only got into it fairly recently, considering how old it is, I can't say too much about it. It opens with Riff Raff, which is great. The Jack, Problem Child, A Whole Lot of Rosie, High Voltage, Let There Be Rocker. They close with Rocker, and they did it differently live than on Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap. So this one, I can't say it's a bad album. It's just in terms of live albums, I think you have to be there at the time they come out. It's hard to go back and listen to a live album. I think this is considered a classic, but for me, it came along. I discovered it far too late for it to really have any impact on me. But now this was a live album, and it did look like it, so that was good. Although I think that would have been a cool. I love that one. The back photo is great. Yeah, so not too much to say about this. Did I mention the title? This is If You Want Blood, You've Got It, which was a song on the next album, which I'm going to talk about right now as I put this down and pick up the next one. Highway to Hell. This was I guess I didn't realize at the time how big they were. I didn't know that this was such a huge album at the time. This came out in 1979. Of course, it was Bon Scott's last album. This is also a good one. The title track, Highway to Hell, every single person in the world knows this. You could go to the, some jungle in the middle of the rainforest in Brazil, and people would be singing Highway to Hell. You could go to the rice fields, the rice paddies in somewhere in Southeast Asia, and they would be, you know, they would have Highway to Hell playing on the radio there, I think. Girls Got Rhythm. Let me take a second to talk about Girls Got Rhythm and something about AC/DC with their punctuation. In my mind, it should be girls possessive, girl apostrophe S got rhythm. And there are a lot of things with AC/DC where I think, did they make a mistake or what it is? But that always, I can't say it bothered me a little bit, but I do notice, and given the dog a bone on Back in Black, it should be given, G-I-V-I-N apostrophe, like given, but I think they printed as given, like the past participle of give, like I have given. I don't know if anybody knows what I'm talking about. I can't say it bothers me, but it is something that I notice. It's not worth getting upset over. My friend Jason Satterfield, he would get upset about that. He's I think the undisputed heavyweight champion of getting upset over excruciating minutia. Jason, hello. What else? Oh, Walk All Over You. That's a very, very heavy song. Walk All Over You is great. I think Twisted Sister covered that, or Dee Snider. Heavy, really good one. Beating Around the Bush. That's another one that I didn't know at the time because I didn't hear this till many, many, many years later. One of my favorite bands of the last 20 years is called Broken Teeth. Unlike Broken Tooth, which I have, Broken Teeth is one of my favorite bands, which I went through their discography a few months ago. Incredibly, when I was getting into Broken Teeth, their first few albums, I wasn't really familiar with old Bon Scott era AC/DC, and I didn't realize how much they really, really lifted from AC/DC. And Beating Around the Bush, especially the opening riff, it's almost exactly like call my old lady messing around again, dancing with the girl because she loves to sin. She's Gonna Blow. There's a song on the first Broken Teeth album in 1999, 20 years after this, called She's Gonna Blow, exactly like Beating Around the Bush. And I love that song. Beating Around the Bush is excellent. What else? If You Want Blood, You've Got It. That could possibly be my number 1 AC/DC song ever. I love that song. It's just very, very aggressive. It sounds like they're just hitting their instruments. I love If You Want Blood, You've Got It. Love Hungry Man, Night Prowler. Oh, I should say also on what song was it? What album was it on? Because it's not listed on Let There Be Rock. It's not listed on here, but I downloaded from the international version a song called Crapsody in Blue. And I love Crapsody in Blue. As I mentioned, I didn't like those kind of bluesy, slow, mellow AC/DC songs, but Crapsody in Blue I think it was from the Australian version of Let There Be Rock. I love it. That could possibly be Bon Scott's best vocal ever. It almost doesn't sound like him. I mean that in a good way. He just sounds very, very different. So I forgot to mention Crabsy in Blue, just because I'm thinking about here they're kind of bluesier, slower songs. So yeah, this is Girls Got Rhythm. That's a great song. I mentioned the punctuation, but I didn't mention how much I love that song. So, and Highway to Hell, you could obviously put that in the same category as TNT. Everybody knows that song. It's not bad. It's just overplayed, and it's not necessarily something that you would ever put on. When it comes on the radio, you tap your foot and you maybe nod your head, but it's not something you enjoy. But it is a great song. Favorite from this album, for sure, is If You Want Blood, You've Got It. Could be a top 1 ever. But Beating Around the Bush is one that I've gotten into in more recent years. So Highway to Hell, everybody knows this. This was produced by Mutt Lange. This was the first of 3 that he produced. Now, talking about the AC/DC sound, I think up to this point, all their albums, let me go back and check. I think every album was produced by, George, was it George Young? Yeah, I guess it was Malcolm and Angus's brother or cousin. George Young and Vanda and Young. High Voltage. Can't find it, but I think it was also. Produced by Vanda and Young, Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap. Vanda and Young, Let There Be Rock. Can't find the production credit on Powerage, but I think they were all. So Highway to Hell was the first one I think that was produced by. That was not produced by Vanda and Young, and I don't know if that really mattered. I think AC/DC they know what they want to sound like, and maybe a lot of people would credit Mutt Lange for making AC/DC superstars. I think it's the songs more than anything. I talked about that with Metallica, just because Flemming Rasmussen produced Master of Puppets. That's not why people love Master of Puppets. They liked it because of Disposable Heroes and Leper Messiah and Damage Incorporated and Battery. And the thing that should not be in the title track and Orion and Sanitarium. That's why people liked it. And people like Highway to Hell because of not Kicked in the Teeth, Beating Around the Bush and Shot Down in Flames and Love Hungry Man and Girls Got Rhythm. That's why people liked Highway to Hell, not because of Mutt Lange. Now, speaking of Mutt Lange, their next album. Now, I should say, everybody knows, and I mentioned earlier, Bon Scott died. In Highway to Hell came out in '79. The next one, Back in Black, came out in 1980. Bon Scott died. I don't know if it was the end of '79 or the beginning of '80, but he died then. And so they put out Back in Black, as you can see. What can you say about Back in Black? I will tell you, I know what I can say about it. I can say that this is the first AC/DC album that I ever got. In the beginning of this video, I talked about my AC/DC history, that they were the second or third band I ever got into. It was either Paranoid or Back in Black. I got both of those around the same time, sometime in 1980. The difference was Back in Black at that point was a new album, and Paranoid was 10 years old at that point. So AC/DC was a huge, huge band for me. So to hear this kind of music, at that point I only really knew Kiss. And Kiss was pretty explosive too. Again, you could say, excuse me, a heavy metal band or a metal band or hard rock, whatever you want to call them. But for me to hear AC/DC and a guy that I've talked about in several of the videos, I think with Van Halen and Iron Maiden for sure, a guy that lived across the street from me, my friend called Vince Farrell. And I think he had this before I did, and I listened to it at his house. And I couldn't believe, and I thought at the time when I was 10 years old in 1980 when I got this, or when I first heard it, and even thinking about it now, what a heavy, dark album this is. This sounded very sinister. I think Brian Johnson, who of course everybody knows was Bon Scott's replacement. Brian Johnson, I don't know if it was because I was 10 years old, I thought his voice sounded very sinister. He was scary, and they had a song called Hell's Bells, and that was just, and these songs were, I don't know, Given, I mentioned earlier. I think this is different. Given is not the past participle, it is the past. This was a very dark, heavy album. I don't know if it was just the fact that it was black or that it was heavy, but the beginning, the intro of Hell's Bells, not just the bell tolling, but the, I'm not going to sing the guitar part, but I think a very different sound. And I mean, maybe Walk All Over You had that kind of dark heaviness to it, but this album really, really had it for sure. Again, I'm not sure what to say about this album that anybody doesn't know, or that I could say that anybody else hasn't said for the last 40 years. This is I think the second biggest selling studio album of all time. I think Thriller, Michael Jackson, of course, is number one. I think Back in Black is number two. Maybe the Eagles had more, but that was the greatest hits album. I think for a new studio album, I think Back in Black was number two. And it was a big album at the time, but this didn't become bigger until, an explosive album, I think until some years later. I'm not sure what happened to make AC/DC such a big band, but when I got this album, that really changed things for me musically. I was already into Kiss, as I said, and maybe Black Sabbath, and shortly after this it was Van Halen and Iron Maiden and Ozzy solo, but this one really, really was a heavy one. And speaking of Broken Teeth, I mentioned earlier Broken Teeth, the comparison between She's Gonna Blow on the first Broken Teeth album with Beating Around the Bush on the Highway to Hell. Broken Teeth did a cover of What Do You Do for Money, Honey? There was a Back in Black tribute album some years ago, maybe 6 or 7 or 8 years ago, and it was a bunch of different artists. Each band covered a song from Back in Black, and they put, I think it was called Back in Black Redux. And some people say it's Redo, but I think it's Redux. And Broken Teeth did What Do You Do for Money, Honey? Oh man, it's just perfect. Jason McMaster really, really, really does Brian Johnson well. Better than anybody. Maybe even better than Brian Johnson. Favorite song on this album? When I was a kid, it was always Rock and Roll Ain't Noise Pollution. Now, maybe it still is Rock and Roll Ain't Noise Pollution. That's, I sometimes wonder where you park your broom. I think that's in Rock and Roll Ain't Noise Pollution. But that's a good one. Oh, I love that one. Also, I love What Do You Do for Money, Honey? Is great. Shoot to Thrill, Giving the Dog a Bone. Have a Drink on Me. When I was a kid, I didn't really appreciate that because it was all about booze and I was 10 years old. Shake a Leg. You Shook Me All Night Long. Now, that's arguably in some ways AC/DC's biggest song. In some ways it's bigger than TNT, and it's bigger than, what was the other? Oh, Highway to Hell. That was a stripper song. I think probably every stripper in the world. You could find women in the Amazon rainforest probably doing pole dances to You Shook Me All Night Long, and you could go to the rice paddies in Vietnam and find Vietnamese women pole dancing in the rice paddies to You Shook Me All Night Long. That's another. It's hard to look at a song when it becomes so popular, and when people that aren't typically fans of that band, when they start to like that songs, you start to see it differently. So again, just like these other songs I've mentioned, you could say Crazy Train is like this, or I don't know, Rock and Roll All Night. It's not a bad song, but I just can't. I would never say I'm gonna listen to You Shook Me All Night Long tonight. But it is a great song, and what a great album. It's hard for me not to say that this is my favorite AC/DC album, and it does have the embossed Back in Black print here, just like the album did when I was 10 years old. Yeah, it's hard to say that this isn't my favorite. Yeah, it's a good one. I listened to it, and I think this was the 40th anniversary of Back in Black. So yeah, it's a classic. I loved it. I loved it then. I loved it now. And I think also AC/DC is a band that it's kind of hard to not like AC/DC. My mother doesn't like AC/DC, but I mean, for people who like rock music, whether they're old, I'm 51, and whether you're my age or a little bit older, if you got into AC/DC in the 70s and you're a little bit older than me, or if you're in your 20s now, and you're a music fan, everybody likes AC/DC. There's just in some ways there, except my friend Rick. I mentioned AC/DC to him earlier this week, and he turned his nose up. So Rick, you're one of the very few. I understand if people don't love AC/DC, but I think AC/DC is a band that everybody can enjoy. And yeah, they're very accessible. They have good fun songs, and they're very energetic. So AC/DC, a band for the people. Now, I should say it was after this, and I've already shown it, but when this became such a big album, this was their real breakthrough, I guess, in North America. Anyway, they released Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap instead of being Australia only from 4 or 5 years earlier. They released it in North America, and it was huge. That was and I thought at the time when I first heard Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap, and they said it was AC/DC, I thought it was a new album. I didn't know and I can't remember if I knew at the time that it was a different singer, or if I thought, wow, this guy sounds different than the guy who sings on Back in Black. I don't know if I thought that or not. But I do remember thinking that it was a new AC/DC album. But so the record company, they wanted to cash in. They said, oh, if you like Back in Black, let's go back and show you this one. So, but their next proper album was For Those About to Rock. Now, I'll tell you that this was, at the time, I liked this even more than Back in Black. I love this. This came out in 1981. I remember distinctly, I got this for Christmas in 1981. And again, I loved it then. I love it now. I listened to this in Back in Black last week, and I'm still not sure that I might like this album better than Back in Black. I don't like to say that. It almost seems like if you're saying it now, you're just being anti-trendy because Back in Black is so popular, and you don't want to like what's popular. But I loved this album, and I still love it. The title track, For Those About to Rock, is I think it's still their signature song. They've been, I think, closing their shows with that song, I think, ever since this album came out in '81. I just realized something. This CD has, the track 2 is called I Put the Finger on You. I'm sure it's called Put the Finger on You. I never noticed that. I'm going to have to check that. I swear I remember it was called just Put the Finger on You, not I Put the Finger on You. Let's Get It Up was always a favorite. Inject the Venom, Venom. Love that song. Snowballed, Evil Walks, and COD. COD, Care of the Devil. Those are great. Yeah, maybe I do like this one better than Back in Black. Breaking the Rules, Night of Long Knives, and Spellbound. This is a really, really good album. This was the third of 3 that was produced by Mutt Lange. And I would say this sounded exactly like Back in Black. Sonically, similar with, I talk about this with Iron Maiden, Peace of Mind and Power Slave, 83 and 84. It sounds like, or the Rat albums, you could say almost all the Rat albums. It sounded like they recorded it all at the same time, and then just I know they didn't do that, but I'm saying that Back in Black sounds so, or For Those About to Rock sounds so similar to Back in Black. It sounds like they went into the studio, recorded the 10 songs for Back in Black, left, went on tour, left everything in the studio, all the guitars, no one touched anything. They came back and they recorded For Those About to Rock. Or they recorded the 20 songs and they put 10 and 10. I know they didn't do that, and I hope you understand what I'm saying. But it sounds exactly. But I think they both sound different than Highway to Hell. Not just because of Brian Johnson, but I think everything sounded different. So I love this album. This could also be considered a favorite. Back in Black and For Those About to Rock could be my possibly top 2 albums. It's hard for, well, I'll talk about that later if I remember. Moving on, 1983, Flick of the Switch, going back to having only Angus Young on the cover. I really like this album cover. It's really cool. I like this. It's just so simple, like just a black and white sketch, I don't know if it's like a charcoal sketch, but I like this album cover a lot. As for this album, and I'll tell you, this is the last AC/DC album I bought until, let me see, until last week. I didn't buy another AC/DC album until last week, from 1983. So I got this, and I'm not sure why, but I never got into it. To me, it sounded just like, this one was produced by the band. This was produced by AC/DC, is the first one that they self-produced. I don't think this really sounded any different than the previous 2 with Brian Johnson, For Those About to Rock and Back in Black. I think the songs were almost just as good, but I don't know why I never got into this. Although I will say Flick of the Switch, the title track, is, I don't know if it's one of my top AC/DC songs ever. It's one of my top Brian Johnson songs ever. I love that song. Flick of the Switch could be easily on Back in Black or For Those About to Rock. Other than that, I really never got into this. I know the song titles, Bedlam in Belgium, was that on this one? Yeah, it was on this one, Badlands. I'm really unfamiliar with this one, and I'm not sure why. I've talked about this before when I talk about these albums with other bands. I think I got to go back and revisit it, which I guess I have to do with this one. But this album didn't really take off. I don't remember any of these songs being played on the radio. I don't remember. I think there was a video. I don't know if the video was for Flick of the Switch. I think it was just like a live performance video. But this album didn't really go anywhere. Now I'm going to talk about my concert history with AC/DC. I know you've all been waiting. This is always the star of the show when I talk about my concert history with these bands. I've never seen AC/DC. So that's my concert history. But I will tell a little story vicariously through a friend of mine called Jeff Simpsons. And I don't know why I do know why I never saw AC/DC. I'll maybe talk about that as I go on. And when I was really, really into them in 80, 81, 82, 83, I was too young to go to concerts. My first concert was 84, Ozzy. But my friend Jeff Simpsons, I'm sure I remember the story from, 37 years ago? He went to see them with, I think, another friend of mine and a friend of his, a mutual friend. I think it was Simon Overington. And I lived in Scarborough in the east of, in Toronto, in the east of Toronto, called Scarborough. And they were AC/DC was playing in Maple Leaf Gardens on that tour, and on Flick of the Switch. And it was a kind of a trip to go from Scarborough to downtown Toronto, Maple Leaf Gardens. I think to drive was probably a 45-minute drive. To go, if you took by bus, you had to take, I think, 2 buses and then 2 subways. And so my friend Jeff Simpsons and I think Simon Overington, I'm not sure who else went, they got all the way down there. I think it was someone's mother drove them down there. They got down there and they forgot their tickets. They had their tickets at the house in Scarborough, and they had to go all the way back to Scarborough to get their tickets. I'm not sure if they missed part of the show or not, but that's the best I could do. What do you want for an AC/DC concert story? If you want a real AC/DC concert story, you have to listen to and watch Ticket Stubs podcast with my friend Kevin Montemont, because I don't have any. What else after Flick of the Switch 83? Fly on the Wall 85. This album sucked. I'm not sure if it sucked. At this point, this was 1985. Now in 1985, I didn't buy this. As I mentioned, Flick of the Switch was the last one I bought. To be honest with you, I bought this last week. I came across it. It was really cheap. It was like, I don't know, $5 or $6 US. I thought, oh, okay, I'll get it just to, fill in my collection. Also, I think I never listened to this whole album until I got this last week. And I think the reason was, at that point in 1985, similar to, I talked about this when I talked about Led Zeppelin and when I talked about The Doors, I had a little bit of a bad attitude towards some bands back then. I think at that point in 85, I was into, newer bands. I loved Rat, and still do. I love Rat. Motley Crue, Iron Maiden, Metallica. In 85, also Slayer, Anthrax. And to me, I guess at that point, AC/DC were the old guys. They were kind of maybe like how, maybe I saw Kiss a little bit like that. But I thought, wow, why would I listen to AC/DC when I can listen to Rat? And I don't think I actually thought that. I think it was it was subconscious. But I never bought this album. But it was in, I used to buy Circus Magazine and Hit Parader, and I guess those were the 2 big ones. And they were in them. AC/DC, there were ads for Fly on the Wall, and there were stories about them. And they were touring. I remember, I think they played in Toronto on that tour with Loudness from Japan. And on this album, the only 2 songs that I really know are Shake Your Foundations and Sink the Pink. Shake Your Foundations and Sink the Pink. There were videos for both those, and those got moderate play. The videos got moderate play. Other than that, now this one, I see it was produced by Angus and Malcolm Young, compared to Flick of the Switch was produced by AC/DC. Yeah, it says produced by AC/DC, which I'm sure was Angus and Malcolm. And they maybe made it a little bit more clear here to say that it was Angus and Malcolm. This was not a good sounding album. I don't know if it was, and I wouldn't blame it on Angus and Malcolm, because presumably they produced Flick of the Switch, which did sound good. I think maybe this was just, and I don't like to say this because it makes it sound like I know what I'm talking about, and I don't. Maybe it was just the 80s production of Fly on the Wall. That was how bands sounded back then. The vocals on this seemed very kind of low, kind of buried a little bit. I don't know if the sound was, I don't know if it was reverby or something, but it just wasn't a good sounding album. The songs, I'm not even sure about the songs, because like I said, I'm only familiar with Shake Your Foundations and Sink the Pink. So yeah, this one, not really too sure about it. I do like the album cover. For me, it might be the best AC/DC album cover. I really like it. Maybe some people don't, but I like it a lot. As for this album, yeah, I really can't say too much about it. It's not a favorite at all. I got it just to add to the collection last week, as I said, just because it was cheap. Oh, and also at this point now, Simon Wright was the drummer. Phil Rudd, the drummer, was gone, and Simon Wright replaced him. I doubt that had anything to do with it. AC/DC was never about the drummer, although people claim to love Phil Rudd. Although the smart people that I mentioned are making comments about how Angus Young is still wearing a schoolboy uniform at 65 and how all AC/DC songs sound the same. These are the same people that say Phil Rudd has never played a drum fill in his life, and I don't care. But I think also a lot of people, they don't like when bands change members. So maybe some people, when they saw that Phil Rudd was gone, they didn't like this. So I think Phil Rudd left in the middle of the Flick of the Switch tour or before. I know he was on the album, but I don't know. So Fly the Wall to me was AC/DC in the new realm of, if you call it hair metal or newer, not new metal like Korn or Limp Bizkit or Deftones, but new hard rock at that time. AC/DC just didn't fit in with Rat and Motley Crue and Metallica. So that was it. After that, Fly on the Wall, I don't have it, but they did, I'm not going to talk about this much, they did Who Made Who, which was, I think that was 86. It was kind of a weird album. Who Made Who was the song. Who Made Who Made You. And it was a pretty big song. I think it was much bigger than anything from Fly on the Wall or Flick of the Switch. But it was a weird album because it wasn't exactly a new album. It wasn't exactly a greatest hits album. It wasn't exactly a soundtrack album. Although you could make cases for all three of those being true. It was kind of a greatest hits because You Shook Me All Night Long was on it. Maybe Ride On was on it. Or there were a couple of old songs. Highway to Hell, I'm not sure. There were two or three or four new songs. Who Made Who? And I think a couple of instrumentals. And I think it was promoted as being part of the Maximum Overdrive soundtrack, this Stephen King movie. So Who Made Who, I never bought that, didn't care about that. The song Who Made Who, I didn't even like it at the time. I guess it's okay now because I haven't heard it for so long. And as I've said before, sometimes you need some time away. And Who Made Who sounds pretty good now, but I wouldn't buy the album. So their next proper studio album is Blow Up Your Video. And this came out in 1988, and at the time, I thought it was a strange album title, and I still think it's now. Still think it is now. I'm not sure why they call it Blow Up Your Video. This is another one like Fly on the Wall. I just got this last week. Same thing. It was like, $5 or $6 US. I thought I'll, continue gradually maybe filling in my AC/DC collection. I will tell you, as a spoiler continuing, this was the last AC/DC album that I bought until a week ago. So the next ones, I didn't buy any of them. Blow Up Your Video, yeah, this album, should I say it sucks? I don't really like to say that. It seems too easy to say that. This album just never caught on with me. Maybe by 88, I was in full out thrash mode, and I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but I just didn't like it. Even, I guess the only songs I really know on this are Heat Seeker, and That's the Way I Want to Rock and Roll, and I never particularly liked any of those. This album is also, I think, the worst sounding AC/DC album. It just didn't sound very good. And who produced this? This was Vanda and Young. So this was Harry Vanda and George Young, like the first, the Bon Scott album. So I guess that shows you production doesn't mean too much, or the producer's name doesn't mean too much. Yeah, nothing else to say about this. Although I should say Two's Up is a very strange, maybe one of the most unique sounding AC/DC songs. It doesn't, I mean, it sounds like AC/DC. You're going to hear it and it's AC/DC, but it is strange AC/DC. It's not good or bad. It's just kind of unique. Yeah, so this album was, I would say this is I can't say the worst. My least favorite AC, maybe not. There's one later, maybe that could be even lower. But at least for the, going back into the 80s, this album for me, Blow Up Your Video was not very good. Maybe I got into it too late. But I didn't, like I said, I didn't like the singles at the time either. So Blow Up Your Video, 1988. So as I said, that was the last one, which means I have to go to the notes. All right. So after that came, what was the next one that came after that? Was it Ball Breaker or Stick Up? It was Ball Breaker. Let me find the track listing here for Ball Breaker. If anybody remembers Miss Ballbreaker from Porky's, classic Canadian movie. Oh no, was it? No, 1995. No, what came out before Ball Breaker? Maybe that was it. Okay, yeah, we'll go with Ball Breaker. It says 95. It seems that did they go 7 years between an album? All right. Yeah, Ball Breaker. again, this was produced by Rick Rubin. Yeah, I remember that. Rick Rubin and somebody else produced this. Who cares? AC/DC, they know what they need to sound like. I'm not sure why they had, these big name producers later, Rick Rubin and Brendan O'Brien and Bruce Fairburn. No, I forgot about, how could I forget? No, I missed the Razor's Edge. Forget what I said about Ballbreaker. I'm going to go to the Razor's Edge. The Razor's Edge was one that I didn't listen to in full until last week. That's a great album. I don't know why I think at that point I'd given up on AC/DC, and I guess I just refused to embrace them or to buy their stuff. So I knew that everybody, again, I would say Thunderstruck, you could put it in the category of You Shook Me All Night Long and TNT and Highway to Hell. Huge, massive song. And I didn't like it that much at the time. And over the years, I really hated it just because I got so sick of it. It was played at every sporting event. It was played on the radio. It was played at bars. It was played at strip clubs. It was played at parties. It was played at, people were driving by in their cars and they were playing Thunderstruck. And the other singles were Money Talks and Are You Ready? And I thought, I didn't really think much of those at the time. When I listened to them last week, man, I really liked them. And I should say also about, let me see, there were like quite a few songs on here that I really liked that I never knew about. And I should say it's a great sounding AC/DC album, maybe one of the best ones ever. For sure, much, much better sounding sonically than Blow Up Your Video and Fly on the Wall. Who produced The Razor's Edge? I think that was Bruce Fairburn. It was. I'm just seeing this now that, Mistress for Christmas was about Donald Trump in 1990. I never knew that. Let me see the track list for The Razor's Edge. This shot AC/DC back into superstardom. They with Back in Black and For Those About to Rock, they were huge. And then they started going down, not just with me. I think my opinion of them or my view of them was pretty similar to the way the general public perceived them. This album was huge. The Razor's Edge was huge. Let me see. Fire Your Guns was also a good song when I listened to this last week. The Razor's Edge, the title track was good. Rock Your Heart Out, horrible title. It sounds like a Y&T or a Dawkins song or Keel or something, or AC/DC. But good song, Rock Your Heart Out. And If You Dare, the last song, when I listened to that last week, I was listening to it with my headphones. I was out walking, and I kind of had, drifted away. I was listening to it, but I wasn't really paying attention to it. And when If You Dare came on, I noticed the guitar solo. I thought, man, this sounds like a fucking great guitar solo. And I don't really say that about a lot of songs, and especially about AC/DC. But If You Dare is a really, really good AC/DC song. So I'd say on this, Razor's Edge, Thunderstruck, Fire Your Guns, Money Talks, Razor's Edge, the first 4, and then Rock Your Heart Out, 5, Are You Ready, 6, and If You Dare, 7. At least 7 great songs. The other ones, I think they were okay too, but this is a good album. I overlooked this. I missed the boat on this one for sure. And Bruce Fairburn produced it. Bruce Fairburn, I think, also produced, was it Bon Jovi, Slippery When Wet? And he produced a lot of those big rock hair metal albums at the time. But yeah, so Razor's Edge is really, really good. I for sure missed something on that one. So that was 1990. And then 1995, now we'll go back to Ballbreaker, which was produced by Rick Rubin. I'm not sure why. And let me find the track listing. This is another one. I listened to AC/DC a bunch last week just to familiarize myself a little bit. Hard as a Rock, that was the single from this one. And really the only one that I'm familiar with was Hard as a Rock. And anything else? I think Hail Caesar, was that a video? Yeah, actually I listened to this last night. My electricity went out here. My electricity was out for like almost 3.5 hours because I live in Mexico and these kind of things happen. And I sat in bed and listened to this with headphones, and nothing really caught me. Oh, the Honey Roll, I think that was an okay song. But yeah, Ballbreaker, not sure why they got Rick Rubin to produce it, but not too much to say about Ball Breaker. 11 songs. AC/DC was always good for 10 songs. I think High Voltage had 9, and maybe Let There Be Rock, I think, had 9. At this point, bands were getting into longer albums, and I think all those early AC/DC albums up to at least Fly on the Wall were like 40, 44 minutes. At this point, they started to get longer. I think bands with CDs, you know, by that point were huge. I think bands felt pressure to make their albums longer instead of better. Yeah, this was 47, so almost 50 minutes. So, yeah, so what else can I say about Ball Breaker? Not too much. So after that was, they did put out a box set, the Bonfire box set, which was like AC/DC has never done a proper greatest hits compilation album. They did Bonfire, but that was, I think that had some, I didn't buy it, I don't really know anything about it, but that had some unreleased stuff, and so it was a compilation album, but I wouldn't say a greatest hits album. So the next was, Stiff Upper Lip. Let me find Stiff Upper Lip, the track listing. And it's another one that I don't have too much to say about. It came out, I think, in 2000. Yeah, 2000. Also, produced by George Young also, which I guess was fine. Nothing, this I did listen to last week. Nothing really to say about this one. I think the title track, Stiff Upper Lip, was the only song that I even really knew at the time. And at this point, I think AC/DC had really established themselves as, I guess, kind of like how Iron Maiden is now, and Metallica, and Pearl Jam. You know, they went up, 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 they were huge, and then they had a big slide, which a lot of bands never recover from, and then they go, you know, through the top. I think AC/DC, probably from the Razor's Edge on, were never going to be anything less than an arena band. Iron Maiden in the mid to the late 90s was playing in clubs, I think in some small clubs too. AC/DC never got to that, but they did have a big slip. But then they became, you know, a huge international band. They played nothing less than arenas and stadiums, I think, in a lot of cases. And yeah, so Stiff Upper Lip, I think that's all I can say about that. What came after Stiff Upper Lip? Was it Black Ice? At this point, AC/DC was putting albums out every 5 years. Yeah, Black Ice came out in 2008. Is that right? So was it 8 years? Did I miss something? You have to tell me if I missed something. Let me check my my notes here. Ball Breaker, Razor's Edge, Stiff Upper Lip. Yeah, I guess Black Ice was the next one. Yeah, it says 8 years between. Wow. And at this point, I just couldn't have cared less about AC/DC. I didn't care about them for years at that point, and this didn't change. Brendan O'Brien produced this album, who produced Pearl Jam, who's arguably my favorite band ever. This album was 55 minutes looking at it now. The only song I knew from this album, I did listen to this. When this came out, I did listen to the full album. I didn't buy it and I never got into it. I do remember the song Rock and Roll Train. That was also the last time they played here in Mexico City. I think they played here on 2009 in that tour. And I didn't see, so that was, at least up to this point, my last chance to see AC/DC. Hopefully they tour next year, because I do want to see them now. With me, AC/DC has had a renaissance. So now I think I really, really want to see AC/DC. But they played in the big stadium in Mexico City in, I guess it was 2009, and I didn't go, and I regret not going. And what else? So that was Black Ice. And then after that, Rock or Bust came out after that. Rock or Bust came out in, was it 2014 or 2015? I did listen to that whole album completely, and I thought it sucked. Black Ice, I mean, I thought it was okay, but I didn't like it. But when I listened to Rock or Bust, I just didn't like it at all. I thought, AC/DC is really just, running on fumes now. Turned out that was, I think at this point, Malcolm Young was gone. He was still alive. When did he die? I think he died in 2017 or 16. This album came out in 2014. But he didn't play on it, and he didn't play on that tour. And maybe that was, I don't know if that was why also people didn't like it. People, you have these subconscious things that can affect whether you like or Unlike Something. And Phil Rudd at this point had been arrested. He was supposed to tour with them, and he got arrested for dirty deeds done dirt cheap, for a murder for hire plot and having drugs or something in his house. So Chris Slade came back. So that was a weird time for AC/DC. And then to make matters worse, and getting back to the album, the only song I remember was Play Ball. Really bad song. And so that was, even though AC/DC was still a big band, that was, I think, kind of dark times for them. That their drummer was gone, their guitarist and founding member, and probably the most important guy in the band, maybe, despite what... I think we were kind of taught as kids to think that Malcolm was the main guy in the band, but I think as time passed, it kind of became more obvious that it was Malcolm instead of Angus. Angus was the face. Malcolm was the behind-the-scenes guy, I think. The engine. And now also on that tour, at least partway through that tour, Brian Johnson supposedly, I guess, I don't doubt them. He lost his hearing. If you can't hear, you can't sing. And he was replaced by Axl. And I remember very, very well when those rumors came out that AC/DC was rehearsing with Axl, and that Axl was going to tour with them. I said, and I was wrong, there was no way that was ever going to happen. And I was wrong. Axl did it. I wish I had seen that. If they had come to Mexico City on that tour, I would have gone for sure. I was actually very excited to see them with Axl. And from what I saw, the videos and sound, I thought he sounded great. I thought Axl, I think he's the only guy that could have done AC/DC. First of all, because he's the only guy big enough. People said, well, they should have got the guy from Rose Tattoo, or they should have got Jason McMaster from Broken Teeth, or they should have got, whoever, somebody from an AC/DC cover band. Now, you need a big star to fill in for Brian Johnson to go play arenas. Nobody could have done that except Axl, and I thought he sounded great. That was 2016, I think. And then also after that tour, Cliff Williams retired. So it seemed like that was the end of AC/DC. And now I'll skip forward. Maybe it was 2 years ago. There were rumors, and these rumors always end up being true, about that AC/DC were in the studio in Vancouver, and Brian Johnson was spotted there, and Cliff Williams and Angus and everybody was there, Phil Rudd. And I did believe that, because, as I said, most of these rumors come true. And then it was confirmed, I don't know if it was this summer or some months ago, that was true. And they recorded and released this. This is so new that if I touch it, I still get a shock from it. It's still hot. This is the first AC/DC album that I bought. So this is called Power Up, of course, and this is the first AC/DC album that I've bought since Flick of the Switch in 1980. First new AC/DC album. All these other ones I went back and bought them much, much later. So this is the first new one I bought since Flick of the Switch. Now everybody seems to love this album. I've only listened to it twice. I've listened to the full thing twice. So I can't say too much about it. I think what happens a lot of times is, I've talked about this in many cases, timing is everything. And I think because it looked like AC/DC was going to be finished. Malcolm died, Brian Johnson lost his hearing, Cliff Williams retired, and they had to tour with Axl, and it looked like that was going to be the end of it. So I think at this point, people were just very, very happy to have AC/DC back. And when you think about it, it's pretty good. They have 4 of the 5 guys that recorded Back in Black, and for those about to rock. So it's pretty good that 40 years later you can have 4 of the 5 guys. Although they were missing arguably the most important guy. But then you could also argue for that Malcolm did write some of the songs. And really, who cares that it's Stevie playing guitar? They're Malcolm's riffs, and I think in the AC/DC camp it's all the same. So I can't say that I love this album. I did buy it. I didn't buy it because I like it. I bought it just because I thought AC/DC deserves another chance with me, and I've gone back in recent years and, as I said, had this renaissance with them. I don't think I love it as much as some other people. My friend that I've mentioned several times, Kevin Monton, he loves it, swears that it's their best album since Flick of the Switch, which I think was also the last album he bought. I think it's too early for me, it's too early to say things like that. And who am I to argue with anybody who likes it? Good for them if they like it. I put it in the same category as Black Sabbath 13, that you're, for a band that's been around for so long, you're happy that they're still around, they're still alive, and they're making new music. It is, I will say, it's for sure better than Rock or Bust. But yeah, I think timing too. I think a lot of people were like me. They were happy to have a new AC/DC album. And I guess I'll need more time to see. I don't know how much I'm going to listen to it. Like I said, I've listened to it twice so far. It does sound good. It was produced also by Brendan O'Brien, who produced... which one did I say he produced? Black Ice, I think. Yeah, Black Ice. And who cares who produced an AC/DC album? But it does sound good. It's AC/DC. I can't, you can't expect it to sound like anything but AC/DC. It's just a question of whether you like the songs or not. And I don't like the album cover. I think the album cover is very lazy. It's just, I guess you can't really see, but there are some... It's like on a stage, and back here it's on a stage, and it's kind of a lazy album cover. There's the inside. AC/DC, I don't think, has ever printed their lyrics on any of their albums. So Power Up, time will tell. I do think it's kind of strange that they released it now when they can't tour behind it, they can't really promote it. Who am I to tell AC/DC how to do their business? But I think it's the same with Iron Maiden. There were rumors quite a while ago, a year ago or two ago, that Iron Maiden had recorded a new album in Paris, that it's done, finished, and they're sitting on it. Well, now they've been sitting on it for, this pandemic has delayed everything by at least 9 or 10 months so far, and it's going to be longer. I think it seemed like it would have been better for AC/DC to hold on to this album until next year, when they could have announced some tour plans with it. This kind of seems like a little bit of a lame duck album, but again, I don't know, I can't really tell AC/DC or record industry people how to run their business. So I'm just kind of surprised that they put it out now, because it was out and everybody was excited about it, and now that's it. There's no tour. That's it for AC/DC. Now, to answer the important question, a lot of people love to talk about what's better. Again, David Lee Roth or Sammy Hagar or John Bush, Joey Belladonna. I think Bon Scott and Brian Johnson is one of the best. I think David Lee Roth and Sammy Hagar really divided people, and John Bush and Joey Belladonna. I think everybody loves AC/DC fairly equally. They were much, much bigger with Brian Johnson, but I think much more acclaimed. I think all the bands who were influenced or inspired by AC/DC were, it was from the Bon Scott era. So the way I see it is, for me, Bon Scott is, you could compare it to a couple of guys called Joe Biden and Donald Trump. To me, Brian Johnson is Donald Trump, and Bon Scott is Joe Biden, in the sense that, for me, there was Back in Black, and For Those About to Rock, and Flick of the Switch. So they had a big lead. They were way up. AC/DC, so you had Biden, Bon Scott, Biden Scott, Bon Biden, Joe Scott, or Bon Biden, and Trump was Brian Johnson. And Brian Johnson had a huge start, insurmountable. Nobody could catch Brian Johnson. But then when you went back and started, you could say that the CDs that I bought were the ballots. Once you started counting the ballots and you saw the true story, I would have to say Bon Scott surpassed Brian Johnson for me. Maybe the best way to put it is, if you gave me a choice between, and this is totally stupid because this could never happen, but people like to make up these scenarios that are, completely fantasy. If I had the option of either only listening to Bon Scott AC/DC albums for the rest of my life, or only Brian Johnson, I would take Bon Scott for sure. I don't think Bon Scott had any bad albums. Brian Johnson had Blow Up Your Video, Rock or Bust, arguably Fly on the Wall, maybe Stiff Upper Lip. Bon Scott was gold. So that's what I think between So I'm drawing a parallel between the 2020 US election and AC/DC's two singers in their catalog. So that's what I think. I think I'm finished, not just for AC/DC, but forever, for good. I'm not gonna die or anything like that. I'm not on my deathbed. I'm not even on my regular bed. But I just have no other bands that I can really go through their discographies for. Lots of bands that I love, but not to the extent of these 20 or 21 or 22 that I did. So that's it. So as I said before, thanks for anybody who watched this, and also I started this during the quarantine when there was not much to do, and now there is a lot to do, and I'm doing these less frequently now because I'm busier on Sundays than I was in the early days of the quarantine. But thanks for everybody. If you watched it, if you scrolled through it, if you commented, if you watched any of the live premieres, if you called me a dickhead or called me any names or told me I was stupid for liking something that you don't like, I'll even thank you. Thanks to Kevin Montavon for featuring the audio from these videos that I do. He features them on his podcast, 542 Productions. Ticket Stubs is his podcast. You can watch it on YouTube with his friend Todd. So to everybody, I have lots of hiking videos. I'm going to keep doing all kinds of videos. Hopefully I can get to 10,000 subscribers. And what else? How can I end this? I don't know what else to say, but see ya.